Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am outside York Gate in London. I'm in the Embankment Gardens. So this was a water gate. Those steps behind me, they led down to the River Thames, and people travelled by boat back then. The roads were bockety, often covered in mire, and it was often safer, smoother, faster to travel by water. So anyway, it was called York House behind there because the Archbishop of York had his London residence here. So despite being in charge of an archdiocese in northern England, the Archbishop of York spent a considerable time down here. For religious purposes, England is divided into two provinces, Canterbury and York's the northern one. Remember that York was the capital of northern England for centuries, the second largest city in England, and York still gives its name to Yorkshire, which has more territory than any other English county. So the Archbishop of York, he was sometimes promoted to be Archbishop of Canterbury as the highest priest in England. Then the Reformation came along in 1533, that system remained there. The Catholic Church was abolished, outlawed, existed underground. Briefly came back under Mary Tudor in the 1550s, but then only in the 1850s, in 1850 in fact, did the United Kingdom restore diplomatic relations with the Holy See, and the Roman Catholic Church began to appoint bishops and archbishops again. They deliberately didn't use the same titles as the Anglican episcopate. For instance, the Roman Catholic Archbishop in southern England is called the Archbishop of Westminster, not Archbishop of Canterbury, so there can be no confusion. In northern England it's Archbishop of Middlesbrough, not Archbishop of York. So the Anglicans have used the titles that the Catholic clergy previously used. Anyway, a bishop's house, or an archbishop's house, is called a palace, and they really did live in great opulence. So they were not taking vows of poverty, chastity and obedience. Well, they weren't monks usually. A few of them were monks. Incidentally, a person can be a monk and a priest at the same time. It's like belonging to two professions at the same time. Obviously, Roman Catholic clergy since the 11th century have not been permitted to marry, and extramarital sexual relations are against canon law, but still went on sometimes. Thomas Wolsey was one of the most famous, and perhaps infamous, people to occupy the See of York as in the Archbishop, and he visited York only once in all that time. He had his eye on Canterbury, but he died in 1530, so he never got that job. William Warham kept it the rest of his life. York House was seized by the Crown in the 1530s. Henry VIII appropriated a lot of ecclesiastical property, and some of it he used for himself, like Hampton Court Palace, which Cardinal Wolsey built for himself because the Archbishop of York, well, he got to be a cardinal. So the Pope appoints some archbishops cardinals, some he doesn't. So it's not always that the Archbishop of York was a cardinal when this is a Catholic country. If the Pope happened to choose that individual archbishop would be a cardinal for his lifetime. I won't get sidetracked to what cardinals are. Anyway, the monarch later sold this on to the Duke of Buckingham. George Villiers was the first Duke of Buckingham, who was a favourite of James I. They'd even been to Spain together in 1524 to see about marrying the Infanta. And the Duke of Buckingham behaved so disgracefully, so mortally offended the Spanish, they demanded he be executed when he returned here, that didn't happen. There you can see the lions rather faded away. There's been quite a bit of erosion. York House has long since been pulled down. The Duke of Buckingham, who occupied it, well, in that Anglo-Spanish War in the 1620s, he led a cataclysmic attack onto Cadiz. Well, it was catastrophic for the English, not for the Spanish, where his men landed and found a warehouse full of wine, got drunk and lazed around on the beach before being put to the sword by the Spaniards. So Buckingham was blamed for this misadventure. When he got back to Portsmouth, a Royal Naval base, he was stabbed to death by John Felton. Felton thought he would get away with it because his victim was so detested, but no, Felton was executed, and that was part of Charles I's descent into his personal rule to tyranny in the English Civil War. Well, that is York Gate, an astonishing relic of an era when the Thames was about twice as wide as it is now and regularly flooded. So this Embankment Garden was only created after 1863 when Sir Joseph Bazalgette built the embankment to stop flooding. He also built a lot of sewers that kept a lot of the effluent out of London. There'd been the Great Stink some years before when the Thames had just clogged up with excrement, and reeked, so much so that Parliament evacuated. But Bazalgette's great-grandson is a television executive, and as Stephen Fry said, that this man is reversing his great-grandfather's work and pumping all the shit back into London. Well, that's York Gate in London.